This video is brought to you by Iona, North America's premier charging network. With unmatched commitment to elevating the customer experience, Iona is opening America's roads to all EVs, giving drivers the coverage they need, the reliability they deserve, and the amenities they crave.
Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me here at Tesla Loveland with the new Model X. Not that you can tell it's new. It literally has new wheels, a different front badge, and some ambient lighting, and that's about it. There's a front bumper cam. Okay, that's all the changes. Today's premise of this video is to look over the changes, talk about the specs of the car, and really to figure out where the Model X sits in terms of electric SUVs, specifically electric three-row SUVs. It's been a long time, I guess, well, not a long time, a year since we did a three-row family comparison with the Model X, a Rivian R1S, a Mercedes EQS, and the Kia EV9. That was all we had for three-row electric SUVs back in 2024. Here in 2025, there are some serious offerings, some serious competition, and I want to figure out if the Model X is still relevant. So here we have three different Model X's, and yeah, you would be hard pressed to look at these cars and go, this is the new one, this is the old one. These were some upgraded wheels, these were the base wheels for previous generation Model X, and wow, there is not much done here, is there? So Tesla has done some slight refreshes to the Model S and Model X, giving it slightly different styling, really for the Model S Plaid, giving it new front bumpers, new rear bumpers, a new set of wheels, some really great sport bucket seats inside, as well as ambient lighting. They've changed a few things with the suspension. They've also changed a few things, making the car quieter overall. And I think most people would probably say they didn't do enough. I kind of went to the conclusion with the new Model S Plaid, it's actually pretty good as it sits. That being said, the Model X, I have very different feelings about. The Model X is not a car I've personally ever really lusted after. In fact, it is by far my least favorite Tesla in the lineup of the cars. The new Model Y just got refreshed, and I think it really rains on the parade of the Model X. Yes, you have the cool Falcon Wings doors here. Yes, it's a little bit bigger, but if you really want a three-row SUV, is the Model X the one to buy? I'm not really sure. I quickly want to walk you guys through specs and pricing, and we'll quickly walk around the car, see what's changed. Largely, it hasn't changed. So the Model X currently starts at $89,990 for the long-range variant. If you bump up to the Plaid, $104,990. There are three different seating configurations for the long-range variant. You can get a 5-seat, 6-seat, and a 7-seat, of which this has. The 5-seat is the free option. It is a $6,500 option for the 6-seat configuration, of which I do think is pretty cool. And then for the 7-seater here, it's a $3,500 option. The Plaid variant of the Model X only gets the 6-seat configuration, but here we do have some new redesigned wheels. EPA rated range on this particular car, 352 miles. Same battery pack as last generation Model X, same battery pack as Model S, right around 100 kilowatt hours, so pretty decent range. These still charge quite a bit better than Model 3 and Model Y. Of course, we would like to see Tesla inevitably push the limit in the future, as stuff in China is getting crazy. We also have cars like Taycan and Lucid Gravity, of which we're going to talk a lot about today in context of the Model X. So overall here, really not much has changed. Genuinely, you look at this car, you really cannot tell that it's a brand new car. Also, have to mention here, it already has a curbed wheel. I haven't even moved the car, so not sure what's going on with that situation. I think one of the big things people really love about the Model X is the Falcon Wing doors. I think there's a big controversy around these. I personally am not a fan of them. Yes, they look really cool, but I think livability with them, the compromises that these require to be implemented into a car, yeah, just really not for me. I scratch my head a lot of the time with the Model X, really wishing Tesla would go ahead and really spend the money, build a proper three-row SUV. So again, this is the 7-seater variant we have here. So of course, 2 up front, you've got the bench seat up here. The 6 seat is really cool, how you've got the floating seat here, can move it and tilt it. Actually really nice for having child seats back here to be able to pick up the entire seat and push it up forward. But the issue I have here, where is the space? You literally have to have 0 legs to be able to fit anything back here. You sure aren't going to fit any sort of adults back here. Headroom is also quite literally abysmal back here. I will not be getting in the 3rd row of this car because there's really not that much space. There is no way I could sit behind myself in the 2nd row from the 1st row and behind myself in the 3rd row. It would just be absolutely crammed. So on one hand, I do think the size of the Model X is good, but not really as a 3-row SUV. It's far too small. Then you go to something like a Model Y, which has gotten so good that I'm really wondering where the Model X really sits. Overall, this car has really not changed on the inside. No different seating options, no different configurations inside, other than it now has ambient lighting. That is all that has changed here in the Model X. So throughout this video, we're going to take the Model X on a drive, talk about this car a little bit, see if we can see any changes in suspension, talk about quietness, but really we're here to compare this in context to all the other 3-row electric SUVs that have come out in the past year, because the market is now getting flooded. Well, you guys join me here on the lovely I-25. We're kind of having some traffic while the express lane is ripping right now. First thing I'm noticing here with the Model X, I cannot believe how loud this car is compared to the Model S Plaid that I had last night on test drive. And again, huge thank you to Tesla Loveland. These guys are awesome there for lending us the car overnight to make some content with. Really appreciate it. Very appreciative. I mean, as that truck rolls by, I can hear absolutely everything. I'm hearing wind noise, road noise, tire noise, and yeah, I'm back in a Model X, and I kind of wish I wasn't, to be honest. Model X has never been a car that I really enjoy being in. The glass roof is cool. The Falcon Wing doors are cool. You know, the power of the Plaid is cool. And then after that, I'm kind of just like, meh. So, topic of today's video, is Model X still relevant in 2025? And I think we need some context here, because if we rewind the clock, pretty much exactly a year ago today, we actually posted this video July 4th of 2024. We had 4 3-row electric SUVs that we did a family comparison with, looking at the space optimization in the car, looking at ISO fix points and, space like front trunks, under trunk storage, and compared those vehicles. We had the Model X. We also had the Mercedes EQS. We had the Rivian R1S and the Kia EV9. That for electric 3-row SUVs was it. Now fast forward to now in 2025, boy oh boy, do we have some serious offerings now. We of course have Lucid Gravity, we have Cadillac Vistic, we have Cadillac Escalade IQ, we have Volvo EX90, we have Volkswagen ID Buzz, we also have Hyundai Ioniq 9. I feel like I'm missing one here, but that has completely doubled the amount of 3-row electric SUVs that you can now choose from. So we're going to kind of talk through some of these vehicles, compare them here to the Model X, and really talk about, is this thing still relevant? Because I'm kind of sitting here scratching my head going like, why would you choose this over many of those other really impressive 3-row electric SUVs? So I think first, let's start off with Lucid Gravity. Now, Lucid Gravity has been slow to come into the market, to say the least. They did, one of those, we delivered cars in 2024. It was like a very handful of people. And then now finally in the last couple of months here, June, July, we're starting to see some actual customers take delivery. But Gravity is, I personally think, one of the most compelling cars of the year. I really genuinely deep down think the Gravity is going to be one of the best SUVs, not just electric SUVs on the market, bar none. You're going to have incredible range with it, incredible efficiency, incredible charging on it. You have the Lucid unbelievable space optimization inside of it. You also have pretty unbelievable handling and dynamic characteristics of that car. As you guys know, Kyle has already driven the Lucid Gravity, made a review with it. We're really excited to put it through the paces, do our range test, do our charging test, do our 10% challenge, hog back, this and that. I think it'll be a really, really compelling vehicle. Then you move over to Volvo EX90, of which we actually just had on test. And I gotta say, for an SUV, I was blown away. If you guys know me, I'm not a big SUV guy. You know, my wife drives our Kia EV9. I do drive a Kia EV6 as my daily dog hauler, and a Model 3 Performance as my fun, go rip around the canyons type of car. So I really prefer smaller cars, but I do also like certain bigger SUVs in the sense of it. Now, EX90 to me was a really compelling vehicle. I think especially when you consider a price point versus something like the Model X here. I'm vaguely remembering, but I feel like it was right around the same price point. Of course, they don't offer something like a Model X Plaid competitor there. It's really more aimed at the Model X long range like we're driving here. And my feelings from that car was it feels extremely premium. The stereo system was genuinely top 3 I've ever heard in my life. The Bowers and Wilkins in that. If you are an audiophile, enjoy ripping music in your car, insane stereo system. That car is literally a stereo system with wheels, and I think it's worth absolutely every penny. I would say the only drawback to that car is a lot of software bugs and issues with the whole Volvo system there. And that's one thing we have to say here about Tesla and the Model X. That is one of its leading advantages over any of the electric 3-row SUVs, even considering Rivian that has a pretty darn good software stack on it. Tesla, in my personal opinion, the way they do phone key, the way they do the app, the way they do the built-in route planning, the way everything is laid out, it's intuitive, it's easy to use. They're constantly updating it, constantly improving it. I have really no bad things to say about Tesla software. I also need to put this in context and say I really have very little bad things to say about the Tesla supercharging network. Yes, I want vehicles to be able to charge natively 800 volt on V4 superchargers. We're going to get there. We're going to see, you know, cars absolutely ripping. I also wanted to add this clip in here, guys, talking about software and the other amazing things that Tesla does really well. And we cannot ignore the fact of full self-driving. Now, I've owned 3 Teslas. I've played with the software before. It's amazingly impressive and also amazingly frustrating at times. The new hardware 4 cars are absolutely better than previous generation hardware 3 cars. There's no doubt about it. The software is incredibly impressive, especially when you start comparing it to vehicles like Rivian and GM and others in the industry that really only do hands-free driving on pre-mapped highways. You know, full self-driving is pretty crazy how I can go from my house here to the grocery store in Fort Collins completely hands-free, letting the car do its own thing. You may have mixed feelings on that. I kind of feel the same. I'm impressed by the technology. I'm anxious to see where it's going to get in 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. I can't wait to see what that actually looks like, but there is no doubt that is not something we can just gloss over here with Tesla. Their full self-driving is one of those things that makes people purchase Teslas, and it's just as good as it's ever been, if not quite a bit better, especially now with hardware 4 in Model X. You know, guys, we've taken these vehicles on our hogback test where we run them up I-70, one of the most treacherous roads here in Colorado, and Tesla scored the highest. You know, we deduct points where we see fit throughout our testing procedures there, but it is really impressive, the software, and definitely wanted to, make this special segment here and saying that is one of the biggest benefits in owning a Tesla, and especially owning a Model X over many of the 3 rows, if not all of the 3 rows in this segment. So let's get back to the video. I guess next, moving on to Hyundai Ioniq 9, a car of which I have not driven. That's one of the new vehicles based on the EGMP platform, which my Kia EV9 is. They've got some updates in that, a little bit better charging, a little bit faster. I've heard that the new Ioniq 9. This is from Jordan, who has actually driven the car. I don't think he actually drove it. Kyle drove it over in Korea, but Jordan did some first looks at it and he was like, yep, feels quite a bit nicer than an EV9. And I think that's a good thing, because EV9 is definitely more on the more economy side of things. Okay, sure, you can spec up an EV9 GT line, but you're spending quite a bit of money for a top trim, you know, GT line. And now we're going to have GT, of which I don't think have hit dealers yet. So that's even yet another vehicle that I guess would more compare to the Model X here as well. A little bit more power, some battery improvements, some charging improvements. So that's there. Really anxious to see the Hyundai Ioniq 9. Again, it's going to be a cheaper alternative, better space optimization, likely better charging. Again, our Kia EV9 is just a pretty monster charging vehicle. No, it doesn't have the peak of the Model X at, you know, 250 kilowatts, but I've seen 220 kilowatts on that car. But the crazy thing is it holds it to like 75, 80%. So you're just sitting, ripping flat out at 200 kilowatts. Again, no, you don't have the amazing Tesla supercharger network, and frustratingly, higher voltage vehicles like the EV9 and Ioniq 9 don't get full charging speeds on the supercharger network. So, you know, you're sitting in the back lot of a Walmart charging with, you know, a flickering light and sketchy people all around. So that is something that needs to be said. Then I guess we should move over to Cadillac Vistiq, a car that I've driven a very small amount. I got to be honest, I wasn't super blown away with it. GM interior materials are not my forte. The use of lots of plastics and really crummy feeling materials were honestly, you know, even this being the black interior Model X, a lot of the material touch points do feel nice. I think Tesla does a really, really nice job with their vegan leather material, and especially having it on lower door card areas, not having a lot of cheap, scratchy plastic on the vehicle. I really do appreciate that about Tesla between all of their lineup of vehicles, so that's great. Vistiq was, you know, not my favorite car to drive, but the third row was actually usable. The second row had really good space. You had, you know, a very different design up front. Doesn't charge as well, I don't believe, as Model X, so some pros and cons there. Then you move up market into Cadillac Escalade IQ, of which we actually have one on test this week. And that thing's $160,000. And that car also has the executive pack in the back, which genuinely makes the third row completely unusable. So if you're speccing an Escalade IQ, don't get the executive pack, save the money, and actually have a usable-ish third row. So interesting stuff there, because that is a serious chunk of change. Next, I think we could move to the Volkswagen ID Buzz. Okay, no, it's not really an SUV. It's a van, of course, but that also offers a really compelling amount of space in the interior, especially compared to something like Model X here. Now, I will be the first one to say the car doesn't have enough range. It doesn't charge that well. I don't think the interior is that nice, but it also has this characteristic that when I look at a ID Buzz, they just make me smile. I know somebody intentionally bought that car, looked at some different options, and went, I want the fun car for my kids. I don't really care about the range. I don't care about the charging. It's fine. So I do have an appreciation for that. So, you know, the more I continue to think about this, the more I go, where does Model X really fit into this? You know, I also compare this car, because I think of this car really as a 5-seat, maybe technically a 4-seat car. You know, my personal opinion, get the 6-seat in here. It looks a little bit cooler. It gives you a little bit more space under the second row seats. And, you know, you can seat 4 people, you can throw your mother-in-law in the back because you don't want to talk to her. I think that's going to be fine, and yeah, she'll have leg room down. I do also compare this vehicle to something that's like a BMW iX that offers a more luxurious interior inside of it, you know, more isolation, of course. No, that car cannot be optioned as a 3-row, but again, I don't really think of the Model X as a 3-row. The space back there, to me, is just completely unusable. I genuinely don't know how you can look somebody in the face and say, this is a proper true 3-row SUV. Those are basically jump seats back there, and that's about all you really get out of it. So, you know, the other car I would consider too, maybe comparing this to, is Audi e-tron, which just got a facelift. I wouldn't say it's the best facelift ever, but if you want a really very nice electric SUV that's a pretty good size, offers, you know, good space in the back, unbelievable isolation, pretty good charging curve on it, that's what you're going to look to. Now, are those necessarily really competitors to this car? No, because I kind of think Model X sits in its own category, and not necessarily in the best way possible. I think it's barely bigger than a Model Y, of which I do feel like the Model Y is kind of now starting to step on the toes of Model X with the new ride improvements that car got, the brand new interior that feels new, feels fresh, feels nice, and offers a lot of the similar benefits here. I mean, even Model Y has the second row power folding seats, where Model X, you don't have that. So little things like that, it seems like, wow, Model X is kind of getting the silent treatment of getting updated and getting changed like that. So yeah, it sits in a really weird space. It's kind of like, it's bigger than, you know, Audi e-tron, but it's not even close to as big inside as a Kia EV9 or similar configured cars like that. So it's kind of hard to directly compare it. I personally think if Tesla put the money into a proper 3-row SUV to really compete with Lucid Gravity, to really compete with Rivian R1S, and even to compete with the Korean cars, the EV9, the Ioniq 9, and of course, you know, talk about the Cadillac Vistic and the Escalade IQ, I think it would be really, really nice to see. I know Tesla can do it because they have some really impressive drivetrains here. Having the Plaid drivetrain, this drivetrain is actually great as it is. You have plenty of power here, decent range with it. You know, no, this is not a 500-mile range electric SUV. I personally am not one of those guys who really think you need much more than around that 300 to maybe 350-mile range. But, you know, the more I'm sitting here, I'm driving over this road, the entire car is shaking, the mirror looks like it's going to fall off. I just hear rattles everywhere. This is not an enjoyable driving car to me. And that's unfortunate because Tesla does make some really compelling product. I talked a little bit about this with the Model S Plaid review that you guys probably have already seen on the Out of Spec Reviews channel. And, you know, on one hand, I don't think Tesla did enough with the refresh. I think the Model X got the worst of the refresh. They literally changed nothing. I'm surprised they even bothered changing the badge on here. Like, that is genuinely looking at the car head on. That's the only way you can tell it's different. And then, okay, you put some new wheels on it and put the same strip of ambient lighting, and now it's a new car. Like, what? I do not hear any improvements in terms of NVH in here. It is very loud. All I hear is road noise coming through, tire noise. I hear wind noise coming through. Okay, yes, it's a pretty decent size, you know, SUV here. I don't expect SUVs to be the quietest thing, but, you know, even moving to my Kia EV9, the suspension is more supple than this car, even though this is on air suspension. Much prefer the suspension in the EV9. It's a way more isolating experience, and it's way less money than a Model X over here. And it's just like, why? I don't get it. I really don't get it. You know, I think Tesla is, they've been really strung on this car with having the Falcon Wing doors, and it is just way too big of a compromise. We have seen so many issues in terms of build quality and fit and finish with those Falcon Wing doors. Every time you see a Model X on the road, well, pretty much every time, there's some that are fine, but you look at the door handles that sit together, and always the Falcon Wing is either above it, below it. You know, they have a lot of issues. I've had 2 customers that I've been detailing their Model X, and, you know, one of them had a cracked piece of glass up here from the Falcon Wing door touching another component. Another one had it after. That kind of stuff is not, you know, a $90,000, let alone a $100,000 experience. So I'm actually back at home a couple days after I've driven the new quote unquote new Model X here. I'm editing up the video for you guys. I've watched through all the footage and want to give you kind of my final thoughts here, sitting after I've had some, time to really think through it, not just hop in the car, drive, and, talk. That can always be a little complicated. So yeah, I think my thoughts coming out of the Model X, I think there are many, many compelling three-row SUVs now in electric world. And, Tesla still has their core competencies, like we touched on, of the full self-driving, the amazing software stack that they have, as well as the Tesla supercharger network. Those three combined are very compelling for a vehicle. But on the flip side, you still have to drive the car. You have to be able to use the vehicle in the intended way. Everybody on this planet is going to have a different use case for a vehicle. I always think it's important that we talk about that. You may have a family that you're trying to cram into an R1S. It's not the most comfortable three-row out there, but then you may go to something like a Kia EV9 and not really enjoy the software. And that is a frustrating thing of owning a Kia EV9, as it's such a good package for a decent, reasonable price point there. Still expensive in terms of the vehicle, but the software is just lacking there. But the space is great. But you can go back and forth between all of these cars. So, we made this video trying to kind of have a sit down chat with you guys and talk about where we think Model X is. I know a lot of you are going to disagree. I know a lot of you are going to say Model X is my favorite car ever. That is totally fine. People can disagree. That's why there are many different OEMs, and I'm glad we have choice now, especially in the three-row SUV market. I think the most disappointing thing, I want to harp on this one more time, going back to a few points I made in the video, the Model S Plaid that I drove the night before this vehicle, the suspension improvements, the new bushings, and whatever else they've changed in there really have actually improved the driving of the vehicle. It feels very nice to drive. They've also done some work on, better NVH and more isolating experience. It's not the most isolating car in the world in the Model S Plaid, but it was actually a noticeable change. Whereas I jumped into the Model X here and man, I'm hearing wind noise from, around the window area here, right by my left ear. I'm hearing lots of tire noise. The suspension to me was really disappointing. I expected it to be a lot more. I have my issues with, Rivian R1S suspension not being as good as T and being a little porpoisey and things like that. So, I think it's important to understand that there is no perfect car out there. There are many cars that have to choose and pick of which way they need to go. In my opinion, a three-row SUV needs to be a vehicle that, while on the road 99.9% of the time, going to work, going to the grocery store, taking the kids to school, going on a road trip, needs to be comfortable. And I didn't really feel that vibe from the Model X. It really rattled a lot and had a lot of wind noise, a little bit of harshness from the suspension. So those are kind of some of my feelings from it. You can disagree with me. That's totally okay. But yeah, I think it's tricky where Tesla's sitting with the Model X now. I personally don't really feel like a full refresh of this car, going through 800-volt architecture, steer-by-wire, totally redesigned interior, totally redesigned exterior would necessarily change it, because the body in white is so constricting. It really feels like Tesla needs to make that leap if they want to compete in this three-row SUV market. Make a proper three-row SUV, make it big and spacious, put the amazing software you have in there, put full self-driving in there, make it spacious, and I think you're going to have a really, really compelling winning product there. So that's my feelings with the new 2026 Tesla Model X. A lot of disappointment. A lot of criticisms I have with this car. I can still appreciate the Falcon Wing doors, the software, the supercharger network, full self-driving, the cool glass, and where this car was years ago. But we're also years in the future now, and it's still really the same Model X that we've had for years and years. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in another one soon. Bye-bye.